Think about the US economy for a second. We're talking millions of businesses, hundreds of millions of people, and trillions, literally trillions, of dollars moving around every single year. It is a massive, incredibly complex system that's always in motion. So, how on earth does anyone actually keep score?
Right? How do you measure something that vast? How do we know if we're growing or if we're shrinking? More importantly, how do the people in charge, the policymakers, the investors, the business leaders, how do they make these huge decisions without a reliable map of what's going on? It seems almost impossible.
But here's the thing. It's not impossible, because in the United States, there is one single agency that provides the official numbers, one place whose entire job is to cut through all that economic fog and give us a clear picture. And that agency is the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Today, we're going to break down exactly what they do and why it's so incredibly important.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to talk about the BEA's main role as the official economic scorekeeper. Then, we'll take a look under the hood to see how they actually put all this data together. After that, we'll do a deep dive on two of their biggest metrics, GDP and the balance of trade. And finally, we'll tie it all together and talk about why this one agency has such a direct impact on all of our lives.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the Economic Scorekeeper. We'll start with the basics. What is the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and what is its fundamental mission?
So, officially, the BEA is a part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and its job is pretty straightforward: produce the economic accounts that give us a detailed, consistent, and, this is key, official picture of the U.S. economy. You can kind of think of them as the accountants for the entire country's economic activity. And this is their mission statement right from the source. Now, you got to pay close attention to the keywords they use here: timely, relevant, accurate, and objective. These aren't just corporate buzzwords, you know? They are the absolute bedrock of the BEA's credibility. The data has to be on time to be useful, relevant to what's happening now, accurate enough to be trusted, and totally objective to be impartial.
And that brings us to a really crucial distinction. The BEA is the scorekeeper, not a player and not a commentator. Look on the left, they produce the accounts, they summarize just mountains of data, and they report it. But look at the right, this is just as important. The BEA does not interpret the data, it does not make forecasts about the future, and it definitely does not set economic policy. Its power comes from its neutrality. It doesn't tell us what to think, it just gives us the facts to think with.
Okay, Section 2, how the data is made. So we know the BEA gives us objective facts, but how do they actually get those facts? I mean, where does all this information come from?
Well, you can boil their process down to three key steps. First, they collect, and this is a massive job, pulling from countless data streams at every level of government, and even from international sources. Second, they summarize and structure all of it. This is where the magic happens, where they take all that raw information and turn it into the coherent economic accounts we all rely on. And third, they present it to all of us, through regular reports covering everything from the whole country down to a specific industry. Now, let's talk about the BEA's headline product. This is the number you hear about on the news all the time: Gross Domestic Product, or GDP. It's probably the single most influential statistic the agency puts out. So what is GDP really? Well, it's the total value of everything. Every car, every cup of coffee, every app subscription, all the finished goods and services produced inside a country over a certain amount of time, usually a quarter or a year. Basically, it tells us two simple things: how big is our economic pie, and is that pie getting bigger or smaller? And to get a sense of just how big a deal this was, get this: the Department of Commerce itself called the creation of the GDP accounts its greatest achievement of the entire 20th century. I mean, that's a huge statement. It's because for the very first time, it gave policymakers a reliable way to see the whole economy all at once. And this is where the data really meets the real world. When the GDP number comes out, it kicks off this whole chain of events that shapes national policy. The BEA releases the report. Right away, policymakers at the Federal Reserve and in the government are analyzing it. Is the economy growing too slow, maybe risking a recession? Well, they might think about an expansionary policy, like lowering interest rates. Or is it growing too fast and overheating, causing inflation? They might take steps to cool things down. That GDP number is the starting gun for these massive decisions. Next up, we've got another heavy hitter: the balance of trade. If GDP is about what we produce here at home, the balance of trade is all about how our economy interacts with the rest of the world. At its core, the balance of trade is actually pretty simple. It's just a measure of what we sell to other countries, our exports, versus what we buy from other countries, our imports. It's the piece of our economy that has a direct line to everyone else.
And this gives you one of two situations. Either you have a trade surplus, where you export more than you import, which usually gives GDP a little boost, or you have a trade deficit, where you're importing more than you're exporting. Now, a deficit can sound like a bad thing, but it can also be a sign of a strong economy, that our consumers are wealthy enough to buy more than we even produce at home. The BEA gives us the number, but the debate over what that number means is where things get interesting.
All right, Section 5, why the BEA matters. We've talked about the what, the how, and the key outputs. Now let's bring it all home to the most important question. So what? Why does this one agency's work actually matter so much?
Well, the ripple effect from a BEA data release is just enormous. These numbers directly influence the interest rates on your mortgage or your car loan. They help shape our government's trade policies. They guide huge decisions about taxes and federal spending. And for companies, they help determine whether it's a good time to hire more people and invest in new projects. Oh, and of course, global financial markets can swing big time on the day this data comes out.
And this just highlights the sheer scale of the influence here. This is not just background noise for economists. It is a fundamental driver of decision-making at the highest levels of government, finance, and corporate America. This data really does set the stage for thousands of critical decisions that shape the economy we all live in.
And that leads us to maybe the most important takeaway of all. The BEA's job is to give us the objective, unbiased numbers, the what is. But what we do with those numbers, the decisions, the policies, the interpretations, well, that part is anything but objective. That's all driven by strategy, ideology, and a whole lot of debate.
So the BEA gives us this incredibly detailed map. It's like a "You Are Here" sticker for the entire economy. It's the trusted starting point for any serious economic conversation. But the map doesn't tell you which road to take. And that's the real question these numbers leave us with. Now that we know where we are, where do we decide to go next?